A lot of programs have to get user input while the program is running. Python makes it fairly easy to do that with command line interfaces using the input function. Now, the interactive interpreter is always asking for input, so it's not a very useful place to show how this input function might be useful. So let's open up Visual Studio Code and we'll take a look at how this works. So we've got our files there with our Python folder open. I'll just close that welcome menu. Scrolling down, let's just jump into the code. You can read this at your leisure. So we want to create a new file called input.py. So I'll just do this by right-clicking here this time. Right-click in that empty spot, new file. I will call it input.py. And Visual Studio Code will open that up for me, so that's fantastic. I'll make this slightly wider. And maybe zoom in my font a little bit. Visual Studio might get a little bit crowded. Visual Studio Code might get a little bit crowded. That's all right. Here's our program. So we will print, "Welcome to Narnia." Each of these lines, when we print, it gives us a new line every time, which is nice. Print, "Would you rather meet the Queen or Tumnus?" Make sure you spell Tumnus correctly. Yeah, I'm going to close the File Explorer just so I can see all this code. Just clicking that that Explorer icon will collapse or expand your files again. So, answer equals input. Our program is going to stop here. It's going to request user input. Whatever the user types there will get shoved into that answer variable. So let's print out, print, okay, comma, let's go meet. And then I will use plus to concatenate the variable answer. So let's run our program. This is going to be slightly different than before. Run Python file. Our program is still running, but now it's paused down here. I'm going to click down in the lower half this terminal. Now I can type my answer. Do I want to meet the Queen or Tumnus? I'll say the Queen and hit enter. The program continues running. It says, okay, let's go meet the Queen. If I run this again, it says, welcome to Narnia. Would you rather meet the Queen or Tumnus? I'll say Tumnus. Okay, let's go meet Tumnus. All right, very sophisticated program. Not really, of course, but it works. We can open this up in PowerShell. Easiest way to not PowerShell. We can run it from the command line in PowerShell. Mixing up my words. Thinking while clicking. It's a bad combination. I'm going to go to the desktop. I'm going to go into my Python folder. Here I've got this input.py program. If I want to open up PowerShell right to this working directory, I can just go File, Open Windows PowerShell, and that zoomed out super lots. I'll just change my zoom real quick. It's going to be off the screen partly, but that's all right. If I run Python space input.py, it'll run that program. Would you rather meet the Queen or Tumnus? Neither. Okay, program doesn't account for that. Okay, let's go meet neither. So that's one way that we can run Python programs from the command prompt. So I'm going to exit out of PowerShell. And I'll close that File Explorer because we can do all of our testing just fine in Visual Studio Code, but we can also do it from PowerShell. Let's keep making our program a little bit more sophisticated. Num delights equals new variable input. How many pieces of Turkish delight would you like? I know some people don't like that stuff. I think it's good. And then we'll do some math. Final num delights equals num underscore delights. I like that suggestion, so I'm going to hit tab to accept it, plus 2. Then I'm going to print this out. Print wouldn't plus final num delights. I'll hit the down arrow key and hit tab to accept it, plus be better. So what's the program supposed to do? First, it's going to ask us who we want to meet. Then it's going to ask us how many Turkish delights we want. It's going to bump that number up by 2 and then print out that statement. Wouldn't that number plus 2 be better? This program's not going to work. See if you can figure out why before spoiling the fun. What's the bug in this code? We can run it and let's see. All right, would I rather meet the queen or Tumnus? I'll say Tumnus. Okay, let's go meet Tumnus. How many pieces of Turkish delight would you like? I will say 3. So it should ask, wouldn't 5 be better? So I'll hit enter. Want. Didn't work. So why not? I entered 3. That's a number, right? But Python was treating that number 3 as the text character 3, not as the integer number 3. So that num delights was a string variable, and I'm trying to add a number 2 to it. So Python's saying, yeah, that's not right. Notice one difference in the code also here. Instead of saying just input with the open and close parentheses, in this input I actually wrote out what I want to show on that line where the input is being given. They both work, both methods work. So how do we fix this code? Well, we have to treat that input as an integer. So how do we do that? Remember back when we talked about number data types? So num delights, what's its data type? It's a string. So we need to convert that to an integer before we do any math on it. So this int function will make its best attempt at turning that value into an integer and adding 2. Num delights will still exist as a string. We're just treating it in memory for this current operation as an integer. So should this code work? Let's run it and see. I want to meet Tumnus. He's nice. How many pieces of Turkish delight do I want? 3. Dang it. What's going on here? All right, we got a data type issue again. So what's the problem? See if you can fix it before I walk through this fix. It tells me the line of code where it failed. And it tells us can only concatenate string, not int to string. Okay, right. So we have a data type issue again. Final num delights is a number, an integer in this case. And here on line 7, I'm combining a string, a number, and a string. I need string, string, string. So what would be the fix here? See if you can fix it before going on. We can change that print statement. str. Here, Python's going to take whatever number we have and treat it in this concatenation as a string. So let's see if our program works now. Play. Would you rather meet the Queen or Tumnus? Aslan. How many pizzas of Turkish delight would you like? 42. Wouldn't 44 be better? All right. Program ran, compiled and ran, and we entered our data, and it worked just fine. So one thing when we're looking at user input, what we're going to get will always be treated by Python as a string, but we need to make sure that's actually the data type that we want to use. If we need to treat something as a number, we will have to use the appropriate functions to convert something, maybe a float for a decimal number or int for an integer. And if we want to do some calculations on some numbers and then output that, that needs to be treated as a string. So we might have to convert things back and forth from the different data types. So the input function is powerful, works really well just for prompting people to enter some data periodically as a program is running, but we need to make sure that we're processing that data correctly. So I'm going to show my File Explorer now. There are a few challenges in the input. The adding calculator. See if you can follow these instructions to create some inputs. You'll have to make sure that you treat those inputs as the correct data type if you're going to do some math. Because we have to add two numbers here, and then we'll print the results out. So give those challenges a try just to practice. The more you practice, the more code you write, the easier it gets.